So at the top, writing proportions of the human figure. And now with the ruler, right? You don't have to, we're not really using the ruler just like with when we did linear perspective. We're not using it to measure. We're only using it to draw some straight lines. And we're only going to really use it at the beginning, okay? I'm going to use the width of the ruler to make, how many lines? Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 9 lines. Yeah, we're going to make line 9s. And we're going to go, you need to make them straight across, right? If you don't have a ruler, it's not a big deal. If you just have a nice straight edge, like either a book like this, right? And you're using a straight edge like that. So here's what you want to do. The distance between all the lines need to be the same. This is what it's going to look like, okay? So the distance between all the lines need to be the same throughout the whole thing. If they are not, your proportions are going to be way off when we start drawing the human figure, okay? So here's what again, you're drawing 9 lines. If you want to make some marks before you start drawing them, that's fine. So I'm going to make mark here, right? And that's going to tell me that that's where I'm going to draw those lines. If you don't have a ruler, I would suggest using 2 fingers. Every 2 fingers, make a mark, right? So like this. Here, I'll do it with my fingers. So starting at the top, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and then 9 will be down here, almost to the bottom. So I made 9 lines, or 9 little marks, right? That now I'm just going to grab my ruler and draw a line straight across, okay? You can draw these pretty dark. We're not going to erase them. What you also need to make sure of is that the lines are straight. Okay. Again, they all need to be the same distance apart. If they are not, your stick figure, your human figure will look really weird and out of proportions. Again, I used 2 fingers for the distance, but if you have a ruler, you just use the width of the ruler. Okay. So if you notice, the more space you have between the lines, the more exaggerated or the elongated your figure will be when you draw them. Okay. We are essentially drawing the width or the length of our person's head, because one head will fit in between these lines. All right. So you should have a total of 9 lines, all evenly spaced out, going all the way to the bottom of the paper. Okay, and then we're going to number these spaces. So at the top, we're going to have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, right? So 9 lines, 8 spaces in between. Okay. We are essentially going to be, or what we just did is drew these lines down here. Okay, on here. Remember how I said 7 to 8 heads tall? Our person that we're drawing is going to be 8 heads tall. That's why we have 8 spaces. Okay. All right, everyone good with that? Okay, I'll wait, Donovan. Thanks. And looks like some people in front of me are still adding those lines. So we will most likely finish this on Thursday when I see you again, because there's a few steps that we go through in order to show you how to break down the whole figure. Okay. And we're not going to need the rulers anymore, by the way. The ruler was mainly just for these lines. Okay. Now that we've all spaced them out, then we're using these as the measurements, by the way, for our figure. So I'm going to show you the right way of drawing the stick figure and how long to make a person's arms, right? Because everyone always shortens them down. Okay. All right, here we go. So remember how I said these are the spaces between the lines is basically the length of our person's head. So remember 7 to 8 heads long, going down. And so we're going to draw the first, our person's head is going to go right here. So you don't put it too far to the left. Don't put it too far to the right. Put it almost a little closer to the center. And the top of the head should touch the first line. And the bottom of the head should touch the second line. The average shape of our heads are ovals, kind of like an egg, right? And yeah, some people have wider heads, some people have longer heads, right? But on average, we're drawing or focusing on the average size human, right? So the first thing we draw is, I'm going to put the steps over here on the right-hand side. So you're going to draw the first, whoops, I forgot the word, draw the first head, okay? The second thing we draw is the spine. So spine to the bottom of the fourth head. Okay? So 1, 2, 3, 4. So our spine goes all the way down to our butt. Okay? And it's not going to be a straight spine. We're going to curve it. It's going to have a slight little curve. Not a lot though. So don't get carried away with the curve. And it's going to go like this. Just a slight little curve. If you curve this too much, your person's going to look all like bent. Huh? And so now it kind of looks like a balloon with a string attached to it, right? Our head and our spine. Our spine controls everything, right? It's where we have our nerves, our nerve endings, and they allow us to move our limbs and move around, right? So the spine is super important, and it's connected to our brain, right? At the base of our skull. From our spine, the next step that we do is the shoulders. So the angle of, actually, let's do the hips first. Angle of the hips. Okay. We're going to make, since our person's spine is curving this way, that means our person's hip, the left side of it, is going to be slightly taller. Okay. Okay. You're going to draw the hips just slightly tilted like this. Now, how wide do you make it? That's the question that people tend to ask, right? So if you want a measurement, if you take the length of your head, of the person's head, put your pencil to the top of it, and you pinch it at the base, your person's hips should be roughly just a little smaller than the person's head, right? Now, some people do have wider hips than others. Now, males tend to have more narrow hips, women tend to have wider hips, right? For birthing purposes. So step 4 is now the shoulders, right? So the angle of the shoulders. Our person is going to be standing very similar to the David sculpture in the PowerPoint, which is that one, right? So very similar, we're doing a very similar pose, just like his hips. This hip is higher, right? And his shoulders, or our person's shoulders, are going to be similar to David's shoulders. This one going down, right? Now, typically when people draw a stick figure, I guarantee you that everyone puts their arms coming out of their necks, right? Well, no one's arms come out of their necks. Arms come out of our shoulders, right? And so from the base of our head to the base of our, the top of our shoulders, there's a little bit of space right here. So you're going to start your shoulders right here, not right underneath the person's head, just below it, right? So right below that line. And you're going to draw shoulders going at this angle. Again, don't make the angle too big. Just a slight tilt. And our person's shoulders need to be wider than our person's hips. So just slightly wider than our person's hips. Okay? So we have the angle of the hips and the angle of the shoulders. Notice how they're opposite. Right? So that means this leg is going to be up a little bit. This leg is going to be more relaxed. And this arm is going to look longer than this arm because, again, this shoulder is tilted down a little bit. Okay? All right. Step 5. Now we're going to add the arms, right? Or start doing the limbs. Sorry, my 5 got messed up. So the common thing that people do when they draw a stick figure and start their arms here, let me just draw a little one right here. They do the head, right? The spine, and then they do the hands or the arms coming out of here, and then they do the same thing for the legs, right? They do this. No one, I guarantee this, no one has arms coming out of the base of their skull or their neck, right? Our arms come out of our shoulders, right? Our sockets. Yes, good point, Donovan. People that don't have necks tend to be like the football players, the linemen, right? They're huge guys. They actually work out their necks because they need to be super strong to hold that line on the football field, right? So those guys, yes, but still their arms don't come out of their necks. They still come out of their shoulders, right? So arms. So I said this one's going to be longer, right? This one's going to come down to about here, right? Now you may think, well, that's super long. No one has arms that end up at their waist or at their stomach. No, an average sized person doesn't have that. Okay, and so the common mistake that people do is they shorten them. Our elbows. If you stand up right now, your elbow will be over where your ribs are at. Okay, and so this is going to come down to here, and this is where right below or right at the base of the third head here is where your person's elbow is going to be. Okay, so I'm just going to put a circle. That's the elbow. And now I'm going to draw a line. So it's not a straight line, by the way. I'm going to angle it in now for the forearm. And for our person's hand, we're not going to draw like a traditional looking hand. We're going to simplify it. We're going to make it look like it has these. If we were to take our hand like this and just draw an oval, so it'll look kind of like a spoon, right? So we're drawing a spoon shape that goes like this. And again, the first thing that people say is like, there's no way that looks wrong because our arms don't reach that long down our sides. Well, I guarantee you, if you stand up right now and put your arms down to your sides, they'll go down to your thighs, below your waist. See? No, then you're not an average sized human, Donovan. The robot in you is the issue, I think. Now, little kids don't have these proportions, by the way, because they're still growing. We're talking about an average sized human, right? Fully grown. All right. So that's this side. The other side, the right side over here, we're not going to have his arm going down all the way. We're going to have it slightly bent, okay? And it'll be shorter because it'll be higher, right? So we're going to, again, start it at the shoulder because that's where our arms come out of. They're going to come out this way. This elbow should be higher than the other one we drew because, again, the shoulder is higher on this side, right? And then not by a lot, just a little above the line. Okay, and I'm going to draw a circle for the elbow. And actually, you know what? I'm going to draw a circle for the shoulder joint as well on both sides. Just to show that those are the joints where they're connecting. Okay. And now the forearm. The forearm is going to go out just a little bit. All right. And same thing, we're going to add a spoon for our person's hand. Just an oval. All right. If these lines were closer together, by the way, you'd still have the same proportions. Everything would just be shortened up a bit. Okay? So keep that in mind. My figure is taking up the whole page, but you don't have to have every single stick figure take up the whole page. The reason why I'm doing this is so you can easily or more easily see this happening. Okay? All right, step 6 is going to be the legs. Okay? The legs, remember I said this one is going to be the one holding all the weight or bearing all the weight. The one over here on the right is going to be more relaxed because it'll be slightly bent. Our person's heels are going to go and touch the last bottom line. Okay. All right, so this one's going to start up here. I'm going to draw 2 circles for our person's sockets or hip sockets. Right, and they're not straight. The legs aren't straight. They're going to go, this one's going to go slightly in this way. Okay. And at the base or at the bottom of the 6 head, that is where a person's knee is going to be, right on that line. So you can draw a circle for the knee joint, right? So you see how everything's coming out into proportion? Still a stick figure, doesn't look like this, or it shouldn't look like this, right? And now go ahead, Donovan. It's a little bit tilted. Yeah. To give you a point of origin, so this knee, it's almost lined up with the bottom of the spine. Almost. So just in a little bit. Okay. If you draw it straight, it's going to look weird. It's not going to look like a natural pose. Okay. All right. The lower leg part of our person's leg is going to stick with this same angle and go in and touch the base. Like that. Okay. So and again, people say, whoa, that's a really long leg, right? Remember, we're still going to add our person's foot and and his heel down here. Okay, so that'll shorten up the bottom of the leg. Okay? You guys know what the longest bone in our body is? Thank you, Donovan. Yes, it's your femur. It's this one right here, right? The upper leg, right? So this leg is going to be shorter. We're about to make it shorter or make it look like it's shorter because we're going to add the foot here. So this person's foot, so if a person's looking straight at us, right, and they're standing normal, this foot would actually be pointed toward us slightly. Okay, and so you're going to draw the heel in a small circle like this, just at the base of that line. Okay, that represents the heel right now. In order for us to show, so act like my hand is my foot, right? So our person's foot is going to be like this. The toes are here, and the heel would be back here because, again, this foot is pointed toward us, right? So this is the heel, and now what we need to draw is the front of the foot. And again, we're not going to draw every single toe. We're going to do similar to what we did with the hand. You're going to draw an oval that sits just right below that heel circle that we drew. So this oval goes sideways like this, instead of like the one we did for the hand. And then all you're going to do is just connect the sides to the top, right? And so this front part right here is the front of our person's toes, so that we're looking at it like that, right? And so now the lower leg should look a little shorter than the upper leg because now we took up some space for the foot, okay? All right. Now we have the other leg. The other leg is going to look a little shorter, but in reality it's not. It's only going to look a little shorter because this hip is lower, and the other reason is because we're going to slightly bend it because this leg will be relaxed, right? So this one is going to angle this way towards the right, right? And the knee for this leg is just going to be a little higher than the other one we did, okay? So instead of right on the line, we're going to put it right above the line, like this. And again, drawing a circle for the knee. And then the lower leg, where our calf muscles are at, right? So the lower leg is going to bend this way towards the center of the body. And we're going to stop it right before it gets to that last line of the eighth head. Okay? Like that. And in this one, we're going to make it so that the heel is here because this foot is going to be facing that way. So this foot here is facing us like this, and this foot is going to go that way. Okay? So we're going to do the same thing. We're going to draw the heel with a circle, right? Like that. And that heel is going to touch the bottom line just a little bit like that. Okay? So that's the ankle. And to show that our foot is pointing that way, remember how we did an oval this way? So this oval is going to be different. This oval is going to be, I'm going to put it away from the heel circle and then put a longer oval this way. Like that. And I'm just going to connect them by drawing a line here and here. So from the top, connecting it, and the bottom, connecting it. Right? And so now that gives off the illusion that that foot is that way, and this one is facing us. Right? That is the basic stick figure, right? So he looks natural stance. He or she looks natural. And the arms aren't coming out of the neck like this one is. And the legs aren't coming out of the crotch, right? They come out of our hips like this. So keep that in mind. Okay, the next step, we're going to add the pelvic cavity. Okay. So the pelvic cavity, so here's our pelvis, right? There's two ways that people tend to draw the pelvis, and you can choose which one. I'm going to show you how to do both. So the first one that I sometimes use is kind of like a football shape that goes like this. That's one way of drawing the pelvic cavity, right? The other way is boxing it up a little bit more. So instead of having a curve like that, what they do is they put lines on the sides like this. So going, since this leg is going in like that, they'll put a line going that same direction. And then on the opposite side, they put a line going the opposite direction, right? And then they close it up like this with a line. So one has more of a curve shape to it. One has more of a, like, I guess you can call this more like a bucket shape. It is up to you which one you would like to choose. Is one better than the other? No. I will say though, sometimes some artists use these for female pelvises and use the football shaped one more for men, but I don't really think it matters, to be quite honest. So I'll leave it up to you which one you want to use. Since this is the last one I drew, I'm just going to stick with that one. So that's the pelvic cavity, right? The next one is the upper cavity. Now remember, we're not drawing every single little bone or muscle in our body. We're just mainly focusing on the big muscle groups, and obviously the bigger bones that we all tend to kind of focus on, right? When we look at someone. So the upper cavity is the chest area, the ribs section, and it'll kind of look almost like we're drawing the shape of ribs. So our upper cavity starts over here, the upper chest, right? And so let me draw it first, and then you guys can see how it goes. Now, if you make your upper cavity really wide, your person's upper body is going to be huge and wide. If you make it super narrow, then your person's upper body is going to be really narrow. I'm going to do an average size person, right? So at the top, I'm going to just make a curve like this, right? And then one side of our upper cavity will be lower than the other side. So since the shoulder is lower, this side of our pelvic or upper cavity is going to have a slight longer length. And it's going to go almost toward halfway down the third head. And then I'm going to curve it up into the center. So this is kind of like our rib cage. And then go to the other side. And remember how I said this is going to be lower? So this other side is going to have a slightly higher position. Huh? So this is the upper cavity. Again, be mindful of how much space you have between the upper cavity and the arms. If you have a space that's really small or really together, I would consider either making your shoulders wider or making your upper cavity thinner. Okay. So this is where like our lungs, our heart, our rib cage is, right? And this is where this would be where our stomach would be at, right? And when we put muscles, you are more than welcome to give your person really big muscles if you like. Again, everything needs to be in proportion, or you want everything to be in proportion. Okay. All right. Next thing, step 9. We do. Yes, Donovan, you can do a Jose Canseco. We'll do muscles. So we're adding, right? We have the stick figure, right? Our bones, and then after our bones come our muscles, right? That encase our bones. I like to start with the arms, right? So we start with the upper arms, right? Up here, we have our biceps and triceps. Biceps are in the front, triceps are in the back of your arm. Now, these muscles start at joints, shoulder joints and elbow joints. You don't have a lot of muscle where your elbow joint is at, right? Because that's where your muscles get super skinny. They bulge up in the center, right? So the way I draw muscles is like this. I start at one of the joints, in this case, the shoulder joint, and I just make it bulge here a little bit. So I taper it, and then I make it really close to the elbow joint, like that. Okay? So it's almost like really stretched out balloon, and at each end, it gets thin, right? So our muscles tend to be bigger in the center, right? This is where like your person's bicep. And then sometimes I'll just put, and over by the shoulder, our muscles are bigger at the shoulder joint than they are at the elbow joint. And don't worry, we will make that bigger when we add the skin to our person as well. Okay. I'm just going to add another one here, because this is where like our person's bicep will be. All right. Be mindful how much space you have here between the bicep and your person's upper cavity. Okay. If you're drawing a really huge muscular person, then obviously these are going to be touching. Okay. All right. Now we have the forearm. So with our forearm, here, let me show. Forearm. Our muscles at our elbows are wider in this case, and then they get tapered or skinnier when it comes to your wrist, right? So they start kind of bulgy at the top of your elbow, and then they get in really skinny towards the wrist, all right? So same thing on this side. Bulge it up over by the elbow, and then make it super skinny getting into the wrist. Yes, if you're drawing a person with huge muscles, then yes, all the muscles should be the same size. Don't miss out on leg day, Donovan, for your Jose Canseco. All right, so we're going to do the same thing to the other arm. We're going to add the muscles again, starting at the shoulder, bulging out a little bit more over the shoulder, and then get really close at the elbow. Okay. On this side, for our person's bicep, you can choose to have a little more of a bicep than on the other arm, because this one is flexed a little bit. So if this one's bent, that means this muscle is starting to flex a little bit, or a person's bicep is flexing. Okay? And then same thing for the forearm in this case. Start big at the forearm or at the elbow and get really skinny when you get to the wrist. Sorry, the iPad froze. Okay. And so now we can move on to the legs, right? Legs, our upper legs, have pretty big muscle groups, right? They're called, so the front of our legs are called our quads, right? The muscles. They're called quads because they have 4 sets of muscles, right? And that's why they're also some of our biggest muscles and longest muscles as well. They start at the hips, right? And same thing, they bulge out And then when they get to the knee, they taper in or get smaller, closer to the bone, right? Same thing on the other side of that same leg, bulge out, and then taper in towards the knee, right? Sometimes you'll see people, instead of just drawing one circle, they'll draw two circles just to show that there's two bones coming together. Just wanted to point that out to people. Go ahead. Yeah. Part of the leg behind the arm. Oh, like over here? That's fine. Yeah, yeah. That's fine. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So now let's go down to the calf, right? So everyone has different calves, right? Sometimes, like here, I'll use my lower legs as an example. I have super skinny lower legs. My calves like end right here, and then the rest just looks like skin and bones, right? But there are some people where the calves go further down because they're bigger, right? So keep that in mind as well. So I'm gonna start. I'm drawing my person's calf muscles like I have them. So they start pretty not they're not big. They're average. They bulge out a bit and then they come in really quick, like that. You can bring yours down more if you'd like. Okay. Same thing. Start at the knee, bulge out, and then they come in really quick into the lower leg, close to the ankle. Right. So right now, when we're adding these muscles, they they don't look right. Right. They look odd. Trust me, we're gonna lay our person's skin on top of it to make it a little more natural looking, because remember, everything's kind of placed on top of each other. So we have the skin or the bones, right, which is the skeleton, the stick figure, add the muscles, and then we add the skin on top of that. That holds it all together. Okay, so for the other leg, same thing. Start at the upper leg, bulge it out on the left side, and same thing on the right. It is okay if you have these two muscles touching each other, or if you have a space in between. It's not a big deal. Okay, we're gonna close this gap or this big space when we add the skin. Okay, so keep that in mind. And then this leg here on the left, the lower leg, is facing us, right? This leg over here on the right is facing the right side. So we should see more of the calf muscle on this one and less on the front, on the right side. Okay, so I'm gonna do the right side first. Pretty thin compared to the other side that I'm about to do. And then just tapers in to the shin. So this is like our shin. Okay. And now the left side is going to show our calf. Bulges out a little bit more and then comes in. All right. We're actually getting more done than I thought we were going to, which is good. All right. So we have all our big muscle groups, right? So forearms, bicep, tricep, quads, calves, right? We have our person's hands, or their feet, and their head. So now the last thing that's left is the skin to seal it all in and make it kind of come to life more. All right, so I start the skin on the left side of my person's head. Okay, so your guys' necks, you guys know where it starts? Like, where does your neck start? Anyone ever think about that? Starts at the base of your skull, right? Right behind your ears. If you, yes, top back, more like here, okay, right behind your ear. That's where kind of your neck starts. And so it goes here, and then it curves down and then out to your shoulder, okay? If you want your person to have a huge neck or huge shoulders, this is where you kind of bulge up the neck or the skin. So I'm going to take, basically what we're doing is going to draw a line, laying it on top of our muscles. And the trick is where we get to the joints. Okay. All right, so start at the base on the left side of the neck here, or the head. Curve it down in, and then make it come out to the left, and then touch the shoulder joint over here. You see how I formed a nice smooth shoulder there? And now I'm just going to drop it down over that shoulder joint. Drop it, have it hug my bicep here. And then when I get to the elbow joint, watch how I do this. I don't bring it in to the elbow. I just go down and connect it down to the forearm, right? Leaving this empty space because we do have some skin at our elbows, right? And then down to the wrist, like that. Then you just keep going. Inside of the arm, right? Again, hug the muscle. Go over the elbow joint so you have a little space between them. Okay, the armpit. This is where people make a common mistake. They put the armpit way up here on the shoulder, right? Your armpit is below your shoulder, right? No one has an armpit at the top of their shoulder, okay? So keep that in mind. So that armpit is going to be here. I'll put a dot, roughly about here. That's where our person's armpit is, and that's where we're stopping it and then curving it down. Now, you get to choose if you have your upper cavity super wide, then the space between your arm and your upper cavity is going to be really small. Mine is an average size, so I'm just going to hug the upper cavity and curve it, and then it hits my hip to grab and touch my upper body muscles. Or sorry, not upper body, upper leg muscles for the quads, right? And so now this creates that natural curve that our spine also kind of had, right? So these two curves should match. If you made this super curvy, then your person's side is also going to be really curvy. All right, so now I'm just following the quads here, coming down past the knee joint, again leaving that space between the knee and the skin, and again hugging the calf and going down to the ankle. So our skin touches our muscles in the biggest section of the muscles and then leaves a little space where they start to get in closer to the end of that muscle group. Okay, and then same thing inside. So we're just going to go around the whole body and lay the skin down. Okay. All right, so start at the ankle. Same thing. Have it hug the calf and the side. Go in. And so remember what I said about the the space here between the legs and the muscles. Here's how we're going to close it up. The skin, we're going to make it go, not touch the other side of our upper muscle for our quads. We're going to have it go and touch our spine, the base of our spine, right here. Okay. And we're just going to continue with the other side, starting here at the base of our spine. Come out, hug that hamstring to the knee, leaving a little space to the calf and down to the lower leg. Yeah. We're going to do the same thing for the other side. Up the leg, the lower leg, touching the shin, up on the knee, touching the upper quad, and then going over to the hip. And same thing, creating this curve going up towards the upper cavity. And the armpit for this side is going to be slightly higher than the other one on the left, because again, this shoulder is higher. So the armpit is not going to be like way up here, just a little higher up. Okay. To touch that. And then come down and hug the tricep. Hug the elbow joint. And then down to the wrist. And then same thing on the other side. So the skin, again, we just lay on top of our muscles. And go up to the shoulder joint, same thing. Think about how wide or how bulgy you want your person's shoulder muscles to be. Obviously have them kind of be the same as the other side. And then the curve. There is our figure. Starting with the stick figure, we added our muscles, we added our upper and pelvic cavities, and then we added the skin. 10 steps. Okay?